Hello, can you hear me? Okay, the microphone works. The camera does not appear to work. So it looks like we are back to week one, where my camera didn't work, but the microphone did. But we're in week 6 this week. Let me see if I can screencast here. So maybe you can at least see that. Let's see. So, no, it looks like the screencasting is not working either. So I tried updating to full Windows 10 this week on my Surface Pro rather than the preview build that I had, and it didn't seem to have worked. So anyway, we'll get started. We're going to start in Second Chronicles, chapter 14. As soon as I can get this program there.
What's up?
Hey, there you are.
Hey, how's it going, dude?
It's going all right. Can't get my camera working, but
oh no.
Yeah, nobody wants to see my ugly face anyway.
I was about to say, giant Dwight face won't be on my screen.
Yep, no giant Dwight face tonight. It doesn't matter. But I also tried screen sharing. Here you go. Let's see if it works. Where is that little button? Can you see my screen?
Let's see. No, it's black. I can see your little mouse thing.
I don't know what my mouse thing is.
Oh, come on. The pointy thing on your screen that you move around with your mouse.
You can see my mouse moving around?
Yeah.
But you can't see the Bible Plus program.
Nope.
That is weird. Is sharing your screen with Plus. Stop sharing. Hide. Even now, nothing, huh?
Nope.
All right, not a big deal. So we're starting in 2 Chronicles chapter 14. And we're going to go all the way through Psalms chapter 8. So we got a lot of ground to cover once again, as every other week.
Well,
such as the pitfall.
I started in Chronicles 14 in this beginning of the week, and I finished it from halfway through.
Oh, good. Well,
Chronicles. So there you go.
You'll get there. You can always just catch up with us and go back and read what you missed later.
Yeah.
That's an option too. So, we're starting tonight in 2 Chronicles chapter 14.
2 Chronicles. I was starting in 1 Chronicles. Oh well, there you go.
Yeah. Then you're a book behind, which is easy to do, very easy to do in this particular scenario. Hold on one sec. Communities. I'm just going to confirm, but I'm 99% sure it's 2 Chronicles 14 that we're starting with. Let's see. Yeah, 2 Chronicles 14:1 all the way to Psalm 8:9. And just like last week, if you know of anybody that wants to join us, then they can just pick up where we're starting, which is Psalms 43. This 7th week is our midpoint. So after this week,
I have about 60 plus followers, and I invited them all. So, but most of them are like not active, you know.
Yeah, well, such is life on the internet. But after this week, we'll have made it over halfway through the Bible. So not too shabby for a mere 6.5 weeks. And we'll finish up on schedule, hopefully, Lord willing. All right. Anyway, 2 Chronicles chapter 14. We're continuing talking about kings, primarily the kings of Judah at this point. Asa is reigning in Judah at chapter 14. And in verse 2 it says, "And Asa did what was good and right in the eyes of the Lord his God. He took away the foreign altars and the high places and broke down the pillars and cut down the Asherim and commanded Judah to seek the Lord, the God of their fathers, and to keep the law and the commandments. He also took out of all the cities of Judah the high places and the incense altars, and the kingdom had rest under him. He built fortified cities in Judah for the land had rest. He had no war in those years, for the Lord gave him peace. And he said to Judah, 'Let us build these cities and surround them with walls and towers, gates and bars. The land is still ours because we have sought the Lord our God. We have sought him, and he has given us peace on every side.' So they built and prospered. And Asa had an army of 300,000 from Judah, armed with large shields and spears, and 280,000 men from Benjamin that carried shields and drew bows. And these were the mighty men of valor." So we see that Judah is becoming somewhat of a power again. They hadn't really had any kind of power to speak of until this point. But they end up becoming kind of powerful again. In chapter 15, talking about Asa again, verse 16, "Even Maacah, his mother, King Asa removed from being queen mother because she had made a detestable image for Asherah, cut down her image, crushed it, and burned it at the brook Kidron." So we see here kind of his dedication. That takes a lot of passion to go through all that trouble just to destroy something. He crushed it, burned it, did everything he could to it, basically.
Mm-hmm. I actually did read that last week, and I guess I just started reading First Chronicles. Well, I was reading my Bible. That's the point. So.
Right. Well, First Chronicles and Second Chronicles say the same thing. They look at the same thing from different angles. One is Israel bent, and the other is a Judah bent.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So you will have read many of these stories before from a different angle. Like when we talked about it last week, we talked about Jehoshaphat joining the battle, and this week it talks about Jehoshaphat's perspective on Jehoshaphat joining the battle.
Hold up, I gotta do something real quick. I'll be right back.
All right, well, we'll just keep on going. So that's really all about Asa. In his last years, we see chapter 16, verse 7. "At that time, Hanani, the seer, came to Asa, king of Judah, and said to him, 'Because you relied on the kings of Syria,'" that's what Syria, he was being threatened, and he relied on the kings of Syria to save him, the king of Syria. "You did not rely on the Lord your God. The army of the king of Syria has escaped to you. Were not the Ethiopians and the Libyans a huge army with very many chariots and horsemen? Yet because you relied on the Lord, he gave them into your hand. For the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth, to give strong support to those whose heart is blameless toward him. You have done foolishly in this, for from now on you will have wars.' Then Asa was angry with the seer and put him in the stocks in prison, for he was enraged with him because of this. And Asa inflicted cruelties upon some of the people at the same time." Asa much earlier in his life, had defeated the Egyptians and the Libyans, and they had something like 3 million soldiers. So, big victories, but it was all because of God, not anything that Asa did. Next, we have Jehoshaphat in chapter 17, verse 1. "Jehoshaphat, his son, reigned in his place and strengthened himself against Israel. He placed forces in all the fortified cities of Judah and set garrisons in the land of Judah and in the cities of Ephraim and that Asa his father had captured. The Lord was with Jehoshaphat because he walked in the earlier ways of his father David. He did not seek the Baals, but sought the God of his father and walked in his commandments, and not according to the practices of Israel. Therefore, the Lord established the kingdom in his hand, and all Judah brought tribute to Jehoshaphat, and he had great riches and honor. His heart was courageous in the ways of the Lord, and furthermore, he took the high places in the Asherim out of Judah. I think it's interesting to note we will judge harshly these kings very easily. Whenever you look at, for example, Asa, many people don't regard him as one of the good kings. There's the perception is that all of the kings of Israel were bad, and almost all the kings of Judah were bad. And the reality is that they had some bad periods, but many of them were probably good kings. Jehoshaphat is always regarded as one of those very good kings. Asa, not so much, but he did do a lot of good things for the Lord in terms of removing idolatry from Judah, but just not enough. So we talked last week a little bit about Jehoshaphat allying with Ahab. In chapter 18 is really all about that. That's Jehoshaphat's perspective on his alliance with Ahab.
All right, I'm back. Sorry
Welcome back. All right, we're up to chapter 19 now.
All right.
And Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, returned in safety to his house in Jerusalem. But Jehu, the son of Hanani, the seer, went out to meet him and said to King Jehoshaphat, "Should you help the wicked and love those who hate the Lord? Because of this, wrath has gone out against you from the Lord. Nevertheless, some good is found in you, for you destroyed the Asheroth out of the land and have set your heart to seek God." So we see here that after Jehoshaphat helped Ahab, his neighbor king, Hanani goes and speaks against him for it. So he ends up instituting reforms. He prays to God, and in verse 21, when he had taken counsel with the people, he appointed those who were to sing to the Lord and praise him in holy attire, and they went before the army and say, "Give thanks to the Lord, for his steadfast love endures forever." That's a theme you see obviously throughout the Bible, but it was one present for these soldiers, Judah. And when they began to sing and praise, the Lord set an ambush against the men of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir, who had come against Judah, so that they were routed. For the men of Ammon and Moab rose against the inhabitants of Mount Seir, devoting them to destruction. And when they had made an end of the inhabitants of Seir, they all helped destroy one another. So basically, Jehoshaphat ends up conquering a big army that's besieging him just by singing, "Give thanks to the Lord, for his steadfast love endures forever."
That's beautiful.
It is, and a testament to the power of God. Jehoshaphat can't lay claim to that win at all, but it's the Lord that ends up delivering Judah over and over and over again. And Judah definitely had the heart of David. We talked last week about the kingdom of Saul and the kingdom of David, and really how Israel is the kingdom of Saul and Judah is the kingdom of David. And you continue to see that kind of.
I thought David was reigning over Israel.
Say again?
I thought David was over Israel.
I don't think so, but I'd have to go back and look to be 100%. Hold on. Let's Google Kings of Israel. No, that's not what I wanted. Let's see. Yeah, David was over Judah. So, and so David gave birth to Solomon, who gave birth to Rehoboam.
Yeah, I just got that to where he anoints Solomon king.
Yeah. Well, after Solomon is Rehoboam, and then you really have that split kingdom because Jeroboam is of the lineage of Saul. So you have this whole Jeroboam was in exile in Egypt, but that was all from last week's discussion. So you really still have this two houses, one kingdom kind of thing where it's not, they aren't as united as Judah might like them to be, but Israel is just happy, saying, "Oh well, we're the true kingdom of Israel."
Okay.
So in chapter 21, Jehoram reigns in Judah. Verse 4, when Jehoram had ascended the throne of his father and was established, he killed all his brothers with the sword, and also some of the princes of Israel. Jehoram was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. And he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, as the house of Ahab had done, for the daughter of Ahab was his wife. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, yet the Lord was not willing to destroy the house of David because of the covenant that he had made with David, and since he had promised to give a lamp to him, to his sons forever. So we see here the result of a bad marriage, and the influence that it had on Jehoram, where he ends up going and killing all of his family because they're a threat to him in this type of scenario. In verse 18 of chapter 21, and after all this, the Lord struck him in his bowels with an incurable disease. In the course of time, at the end of 2 years, his bowels came out because of the disease, and he died in great agony. His people made no fire in his honor, like the fires made for his fathers. He was 32 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 8 years in Jerusalem, and he departed with no one's regret.
Well, that's something. That's
yeah.
a shameful death.
This guy was not well liked. They buried him in the city of David, but not in the tombs of the kings. So he didn't even get to be buried with the rest of the kings. He was so far, so bad for Judah. So anyway,
we really teach this part in the kindergarten.
Yeah, we tend to gloss over that even in 6th grade and 7th grade. We might skip the part about the bowels being slowly coming out because that's gross and nobody wants to talk about it. But the reality is that he had hemorrhoids on steroids, and it ended up killing him. So painful, slow. If you talk to anybody that has hemorrhaging of the sphincter and the large intestine, you will you just can't know pain until you have known that type of pain. It doesn't go away, and you have to keep eating, so it never gets any better. Next, we have Ahaziah reigning in Judah. There's not a tremendous amount about his reign. And then we have Athaliah reigning in Judah now in chapter 22, verse 10. Now, when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the royal family of the house of Judah. But Joash was hidden, so he would later become king. So very evil woman, this Athaliah. Oops. I tell you, this Windows 10 might not be all it's cracked up to be. It could be this Olive Tree Bible program I use. I might want to switch. Matter of fact, while we are doing this, I'm going to try something else. All right. Okay. Joash is made king, and he's done so kind of in a secret ceremony in the temple, although that's how it was supposed to be done. Because these kings are supposedly anointed by God, not man, although it seems like Israel doesn't really know that. And when Athaliah hears about it, she screams treason, and then they kill her. That's chapter 23, verses 12 through 15. In verse 15, so they laid hands on her, and she went into the entrance of the horse gate of the king's house, and they put her to death there. So they said, don't kill her in the temple, take her outside, and then they didn't even take her to like a normal gate. They took her to the horse gate. So Jehoiada is the prophet at the time, the high priest rather, and he really kind of has a joint ruler with Joash kind of thing going on, because Joash is too young. He's only 8 years old. Excuse me, it's 7 years old. Chapter 24, verse 1. Joash was 7 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah of Beersheba, and Joash was right in the eyes of the Lord all the days of Jehoiada the priest. Jehoiada got for him 2 wives, and he had sons and daughters. So we see that Joash ends up being one of those good kings. And in verse 17, now after the death of Jehoiada, the princes of Judah came and paid homage to the king. Then the king listened to them, and they abandoned the house of the Lord, the God of their fathers, and served the Asherim and the idols. And wrath came upon Judah and Jerusalem for the guilt of theirs, for this guilt of theirs. Yet he sent prophets among them to bring them back to the Lord. These testified against them, but they would not pay attention. So we see kind of the impact of Jehoiada. As soon as he's gone, so is the faith of Israel, and they just really abandon everything. Joash ends up forsaking God. We read in verse 20. Because you have forsaken the Lord, he has forsaken you. And so he ends up being assassinated in verse 25 of chapter 24. When they had departed from him, leaving him severely wounded, his servants conspired against him because of the blood of the son of Jehoiada, the priest, and killed him on his bed. So he died, and they buried him in the city of David. But they did not bury him in the tombs of the kings. Those who conspired against him were Zabad, the son of Shemeath, the Ammonite, and Jehozabad, the son of Shimrith, the Moabite. Accounts of his sons and of the many oracles against him and the rebuilding of the house of God are written in the story of the book of the Kings. And Amaziah, his son, reigned in his place. The first thing Amaziah does is goes and kills all the people that killed his dad. So we have
going on.
Yeah, we got a bunch of that stuff going on here. Amaziah would become victorious in battle in chapter 25. He would turn to idolatry very quickly. And then Israel ends up defeating him. So once again, you get back to that inter-house fighting, the house of Saul versus the house of David. In verse 21, so Joash, king of Israel, went up, and he and Amaziah, king of Judah, faced one another in battle at Beth Shemesh, which belongs to Judah. And Judah was defeated by Israel, and every man fled to his home. So
the nations are other Israel, but only one really is being led by God.
Well, only one of them has Jerusalem, so only one of them has the temple, only one of them has the high priest. That's kind of, when you read about Israel and the cities and the high places, that's what that's all about. Is the northern kingdom tried to put in some high places so that people wouldn't go to the southern kingdom, because that's where Jerusalem is.
That's cool.
Well, yeah, not really. It doesn't work out well.
That part, but I mean, just like the whole dynamic of it.
Yeah, when you're taught these stories as a kid, we really lose the intrigue of what's going on and the history of it, or the historicity of it, and how it plays out very much like other nations in terms of, this king from this house ends up being reigning, and the people he kills the people that killed the guy before him, and all this kind of stuff. So it's just a fascinating historical account. That's really all there is to it. Next, we have Uzziah reigning in Judah in chapter 26. In verse 6, it says, he went out and made war against the Philistines and broke through the wall of Gath and the wall of Jabneh and the wall of Ashdod, and he built cities in the territory of Ashdod and elsewhere among the Philistines. That is of note, mostly for me, because Jeremy Hodges posted an article about them just recently finding the wall of Gath.
Really?
So, cool. Yeah, recent archaeological discovery once again confirming that, hey, some of this stuff actually is history. It's not just some story that is made up and people choose to believe. Uzziah really kind of takes the credit for all the stuff that he is, the conquering that he has done, and his pride ends up getting the best of him. In verse 26, and King Uzziah was a leper to the day of his death, and being a leper lived in a separate house, for he was excluded from the house of the Lord, and Jotham his son was over the king's household, governing the people of the land. So Uzziah didn't even get to finish out his kingship term before he's really replaced by Jotham. Jotham would reign in Judah in chapter 27, verse 2, and he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, according to all that his father Uzziah had done, except he did not enter the temple of the Lord, but the people still followed corrupt practices. So here we have Jotham. Uzziah had gone into the temple of the Lord to offer sacrifice. That's a big no-no since he's not a priest. In chapter 27, we have Jotham basically being good like Uzziah, but not making the same mistakes. This should be a big message, the story of Uzziah to Israel or Judah and Israel, about who really is their king. If the king can't even go into the temple and offer a sacrifice, then who really is the king? And it's not any man, but they never seem to get that. In chapter 28, we have Ahaz reigning in Judah, and he's kind of the polar opposite of Jotham. Verse 2, but he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. He even made metal images for the Baals. So he went a step beyond carved images and actually had metal images of the Baals fashioned. And then he made offerings in the valleys of the son of Hinnom, and burned his sons as an offering, according to the abominations of the nations whom the Lord drove out before the people of Israel. And he sacrificed and made offerings on the high places and on the hills and under every green tree. So you see this Ahaz guy is just really kind of amping it up. He's taking his anti-God to a whole another level. All right. Judah ends up being defeated as a result of Ahaz and all of his sinfulness. And then we have Hezekiah reigning in Judah. Hezekiah began to reign when he was 25 years old, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abijah, and daughter of Zechariah. And he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, according to all that David his father had done. Give me some water, please.
Okay.
All right.
You have to get me some water.
Oh.
No, I'm telling my son to get me some water.
Yeah.
I'm becoming parched.
Some water.
Say again?
Were you telling
Evan. Hezekiah ends up cleansing the temples. There's a pretty clear theme here, where you have the good kings tended to live a little bit longer than the bad kings. Hezekiah being one of those fairly good kings and cleaning up the temple, and would live 29 years as ruler as a result of it. So,
All right.
Hezekiah restores temple worship. This is something that the Israelites had not been able to do for a long time. In verse 31, he said, you have now consecrated yourselves to the Lord. Come near, bring sacrifices and thank offerings to the house of the Lord. So that's what the people of Israel did. They celebrate the Passover for the first time in a really long time, which was not good. And in verse 27, then the priests and the Levites arose and blessed the people, and their voice was heard, and their prayers came to his holy habitation in heaven. So it's interesting to note here that even though the sinful people of Judah and Israel, as soon as they decide to repent, God is right there waiting on them. He never went anywhere. It's they who departed. So we see this idea of redemption and forgiveness even in the Old Testament. It's not just a New Testament theme. Hezekiah organizes the priests in verse 20 of chapter 31. Thus Hezekiah did throughout all Judah, and he did what was good and right and faithful before the Lord his God, and every work that he undertook in the service of the house of God and in accordance with the law and the commandments, seeking his God, he did with all his heart and prospered. So we see Hezekiah really having a very good reign over Judah. And in chapter 32, Sennacherib would try to invade, but Hezekiah would be able to withstand because God was on his side. I mean, it's really that simple. So Sennacherib ends up defeated, and tuck his tail and run. And then we have Manasseh reigning in Judah. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned, this is chapter 33, reigned 55 years in Jerusalem, and he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord according to the abominations of the nations, whom the Lord drove out before the people of Israel. The interesting thing here, I mentioned a minute ago about how the righteous kings tended to live longer. This king, in verse 14, afterward he built an outer wall for the city of David west of Gihon in the valley, and for the entrance into the fish gate, and he carried it around Ophel and raised it to a great height. He also put commanders of the army in all the fortified cities in Judah, and he took away the foreign gods and the idols of the house of the Lord, and all the altars that he had built on the mountain of the house of the Lord and in Jerusalem.
The king was 12-year-old.
Well, that's how old he was when he started.
Yeah, when he started.
Yeah, I don't know how old he was when all this happened, but he also restored the altar of the Lord and offered on it sacrifices of peace offerings and thanksgiving, and he commanded Judah to serve the Lord, the God of Israel. Nevertheless, the people still sacrificed at the high places, but only to the Lord their God. So he didn't remove the high places, but the people started using them to sacrifice to the Lord, not for serving other gods. In verse 20, so Manasseh slept with his fathers, and they buried him in his house. And Ammon, his son, reigned in his place. And then we see Ammon just really gets a footnote in history. He was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem. So he did what was evil. He didn't live very long. Chapter 34, we have Josiah reigning in Judah. Josiah was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. In verse 8, now in the 18th year of his reign, when he had cleansed the land and the house, all this other stuff happens. And then we skip down to verse 21. This is still when he is 26 years old. Go inquire of the Lord for me, for those who are left in Israel and in Judah, concerning the words of the book that has been found, that they had just found the book of the law. For great is the rest.
Real quick, just before we
Sure.
move on. So, how many viewers have we had? Because if we have like a bunch of viewers that do watch these, they might not get how an 8-year-old is ruling. And I know that the 8-year-old. Okay, well, first of all, if he's Torah, he'd probably be just fine. Jeremy's,
Right.
he probably do, because that kid's amazing. He's a genius.
Sure.
There are some really smart 8-year-olds out there, but they would also inquire of wisdom. They would inquire wisdom of elders and the other people who had more experience. Correct?
So we of the young kings that we've seen so far, one was kind of puppet of his mother. One was puppet of a high priest and would later be a good king. The one that was puppet of the mother was a bad king. So, and in this case, probably, let's see, what does it say here? Yeah, he's going to be heavily influenced by the high priest. Whenever we see that, you tend to see good kings because they're really raised by these priests. So they tend to do a lot better for as far as being rulers of the kingdom of Judah. So, yeah, I mean, that's a good question because it certainly wouldn't make sense for an 8-year-old to reign a kingdom, but it could happen. So anyway, in verse 21, go inquire of the Lord for me, for those who are left in Israel and Judah, concerning the words of the book that has been found. For great is the wrath of the Lord that is poured out on us, because our fathers have not kept the word of the Lord to do according to all that is written in this book. By the way, you asked about how many viewers. Our week 5 video was 10 viewers. So
Okay.
You're one of those, I imagine, in that list. But neat, nonetheless. It's there for all
Viewers or views?
I don't know.
Views are different. That just means I clicked on it a few times.
Well, why are you going and clicking and giving us some false clicks here?
Sorry about that.
You're scamming YouTube of their advertising dollars. It was interesting. I have my videos monetized, and I haven't gone and unmonetized these. And I went back and just looked at the video because it wasn't posted on the community group. And it has an advertisement for Hangouts on there, which I thought was. Uh, all right. So Josiah will end up being a really good king. Oh, there goes that program again. And he would basically go through and clean house. He ends up being killed in battle in verse 20 of chapter 35. After all this, when Josiah had prepared the temple, Necho, king of Egypt, went up to fight at Carchemish on the Euphrates, and Josiah went out to meet him. But he sent envoys to him, saying, "What have we to do with each other, king of Judah? I am not coming against you this day, but against the house of which I am at war. God has commanded me to hurry. See, supposing God, who is with me, lest he destroy you." Nevertheless, Josiah did not turn away from him, but disguised himself in order to fight with him. He did not listen to the words of Necho from the mouth of God, but came to fight in the plain of Megiddo. He would end up being killed by an arrow. So, not a good day for him. So he didn't listen to the word of God. That ended poorly for him. Judah ends up being captured and burned after that. And then that really is it for the kingdom of Judah. There are no more. They would only have puppet kings and vassal states after that until the world, the United Nations, gives Israel its own kingdom in the 1940s. All right. So that finishes out the book of Ezra. Excuse me, the book of 2nd Chronicles. Next, we move to the story of Ezra. I'm trying to install eSword because this olive tree is just continually crashing. And I have a low tolerance for that.
Wow.
I guess I should say I have a high tolerance. I guess it's crashed probably 100 times today, and I keep using it. All right, Ezra. So when we look at Ezra and Nehemiah, we have the story of basically the return of some of the Jews, mostly the priestly orders, to Israel to rebuild. So hold on, I'm going to see if eSword will pull up here. eSword works. Let's see if I can get a Bible that I'll download. And they've made big improvements to eSword since I last used it. You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm going to lose all my markings doing this, but at least it won't crash all the time. There it is. Ezra. So, as I was saying, Ezra is basically the story of the return of the Israelites to Jerusalem, not so much anywhere else. So they were allowed to go and rebuild Jerusalem. There are other stories woven in the book of Ezra. So basically, Cyrus proclaims that the Israelites can go and return, and they do. And in chapter 2, you have the names of the people who returned. And then in chapter 3, they rebuild the altar, and they sang responsively, praising and giving thanks to the Lord. This is verse 11. For he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever towards Israel. So here they're finally being restored, and they are grateful as a result of that. They get intimidated into stopping in chapter 4, and eventually there's a decree that they have to stop, so they do. So a letter is sent back that says, "Hey, look, you said we could do this." So they end up saying, "Yes, you can do this," and they start rebuilding the city again. And that letter can be read in chapter 5. Next, we have. Say again.
I was just saying, all right.
All right. So in chapter 6 of Ezra, you have the decree of Darius, which basically lets them start all over again. The temple is finished, and the Passover is celebrated in the temple for the first time in years and years. Ezra is then sent to teach the people. I tried to keep using that olive tree, but it ain't gonna work. Let's see here. So Ezra is sent to teach the people. I'm gonna switch to my phone because I'm tired of it crashing.
Okay.
And I'm not 100% on if it transfers if it syncs or not, but it'll have to do. So in chapter 6, we have the temples rebuilt, the Passover is celebrated, and then Ezra is sent to the people to teach the people. Ezra is the son of Sariah, the son of blah, blah, blah. It goes on and tells about his whole lineage in chapter 7. And there went up also in verse 7 to Jerusalem in the 7th year of Artaxerxes the king, some of the people of Israel and some of the priests and Levites, the singers and the gatekeepers and the temple servants. And Ezra came to Jerusalem in the 5th month, which was in the 7th year of the king. For on the 1st day of the 1st month he began to go up from Babylonia, and on the 1st day of the 5th month he came to Jerusalem. For the good hands of his God was on him. For Ezra had set his heart to study the law of the Lord, and to do it, and to teach his statutes and rules in Israel. So Ezra is just set on doing whatever can be done to make sure that God's worshiped properly. Next, you have chapter 8. All the people that went with Ezra is listed in chapter 8. And he ends up restoring the order of the Levites, the temple. They have to be protected because of the people standing against them in the rebuilding of the temple. So they end up having half the people build and half the people stand guard. And they did that until the temple was built. The interesting thing, where is that verse? Because it didn't transfer my markings. I believe it only took them 52 days. Or am I thinking of Nehemiah? I'm just going to deal with the crashing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the lacking of my notes is driving me nuts. In chapter 9, Ezra prays about. Okay, yes, I was thinking of Nehemiah. Ezra's trying to basically restore Israel as much as possible to its original glory. And in chapter 9, he's worried about the intermarriage of the people. So in verse 6 says, "Oh my God, I am ashamed and blush to lift my face to you, my God, for our iniquities have risen higher than our heads, and our guilt has mounted up to the heavens. From the days of our fathers to this day we have been in great guilt, and for our iniquities we, our kings and our priests, have been given into the hand of the kings of the lands, to the sword, to captivity, to plundering, and to utter shame, as it is today. But now, for a brief moment, favor has been shown by the Lord our God, and leave us a remnant, and to give us a secure hold within his holy place, that our God may brighten our eyes and grant us a little reviving in our slavery. For we are slaves, yet our God has not forsaken us in our slavery, but has extended to us his steadfast love before the kings of Persia, to grant us some reviving, to set up the house of our God, to repair its ruins, and to give us protection in Judea and Jerusalem. You get the idea that he really understands how bad they've been. It's sad that nobody could understand that before now, but he did. He does pretty much declare it right there. Look, we've been terrible people. So they have to come up with something because they've been guilty of intermarrying with the people of the land. The interesting thing that I find here is that this is considered a sin at the time.
It's like these are their neighbors too, right?
Oh yeah, they just married the people that were already there.
So how would they prevent inbreeding?
Well, if you're marrying, you wouldn't have any inbreeding if you're marrying the people of the land.
Yeah, so it's a huge, big enough pool of people.
And inbreeding is really, after you get past first cousins, not an issue.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be anything too big of a problem for them. Also, they're God's chosen people, so
yeah,
that's kind of their ultimate trump card. They're exempt from natural law in some ways. Who else gets to cross the Jordan River on dry land and the Nile in the same fashion? Nobody. The Red Sea, rather. So the people end up confessing their sins, and they proclaim that they will divorce all of their foreign wives. They talk about how it's just too much to do it all at one time.
That's an important word. Where's the verse where they divorce their wives?
The people confess their sin, chapter 10.
I know you like that crinkling sound to the mic.
Verse 6. Oh, yeah, that's great. It's not just like Rush Limbaugh. Then Ezra withdrew from before the house of God and went to the chamber of he fasted for 3 days. Then all the men of Judah and Benjamin assembled at Jerusalem within the 3 days. It was the 9th month and the 20th day of the month, and all the people sat in the open square before the house of God, trembling because of this matter and because of the heavy rain. And Ezra the priest stood up and said to them, "You have broken faith and married foreign women, and so increased the guilt of Israel. Now then, make confession to the Lord, the God of your fathers, and do his will. Separate yourselves from the peoples of the land and from the foreign wives."
Man, that's a huge sacrifice. I mean, like, I'm sure not all these people were super evil or anything. They just weren't just people of God. I mean, you don't just marry someone, willy-nilly. I mean, that's huge.
Well, for us it is, because we are one-wife people, but these are not one-wife people.
I mean, well, even then.
I mean, I'm not trivializing it by any means. What they did here, divorcing all those wives, is certainly significant.
Yeah.
Verse 12. Then all the assembly, and they kind of, well, I'll just read it. Then all the assembly answered with a loud voice, "It is so. We must do as you have said. But the people are many, and it is a time of heavy rain. We cannot stand in the open, nor is this a task for 1 day or 2, for we have greatly transgressed in this matter. Let our officials stand for the whole assembly. Let all in our cities who have taken foreign wives come at appointed times, and with them the elders and judges of every city, until the fierce wrath of our God over this matter is turned away from us. Only Jonathan the son of Ashael and Jeziah the son of Tikva opposed this, and Meshullam and Shabbathai the Levites supported them. Then the returned exiles did so. Ezra the priest selected men, heads of fathers' houses according to their fathers' houses, each of them designated by name on the first day of the 10th month. They sat down to examine the matter, and by the first day of the first month, they had come to the end of all men who had married foreign women. So that's what they did about the foreign wives. They canned them. So They said sayonara and went about their business.
I don't know why that makes me so sad.
Well, it is sad. I mean, divorce is not a fun thing. I'll tell you that. It's something you want to avoid at all costs. Even if there is legitimate reason for divorce, it should, in most cases, be avoided if at all possible.
Yeah.
So anyway, that kind of finishes out the book of. It lists the houses that were all guilty of intermarriage, and that finishes up Ezra, and that's how Ezra ends. Next, we have Nehemiah. Nehemiah is kind of a second wave of immigrants. He convinces the king to let another wave go. So this second wave goes, and it's kind of a retelling. They're building the wall. So chapter 3, verse 1, then Eliashib the high priest rose up with his brothers, the priests, and they built the sheep gate. They consecrated it and set its doors. They consecrated as far as the Tower of the 100, as far as the Tower of Hananel, and next to him, the men of Jericho built. And next to them, Zachar the son of Imri built. And then it just kind of goes and talks about who built what. Their work is opposed in chapter 4. And let's see here in verse 13. It says, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. So once again, they're posting those guards, and that's just kind of the freedom, speech. Yeah. We're going to win here. So the work resumes. They were the Jews that were still in the land, because there was still a remnant, end up oppressing the poor people. And so Nehemiah puts a stop to that. And he ends up generously giving to people in verse 14 of chapter 5. There is a conspiracy against Nehemiah by Sanballat and Tobiah to get everything stopped. And but what I found interesting in chapter 6 was verse 15. So the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month, Elul, in 52 days. They built that wall around an entire city in 52 days. So
wow.
Yeah.
I had read this a couple years ago, this book. I read the whole thing through. And I remember making note of the 52 days of the wall. That's pretty awesome. That is. That's
a lot of work in a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
But when the people work together, if you look at the list of returned exiles in the next chapter, it's not like they did it with 5 guys. Verse 8: the sons of Parash, 2,172. The sons of Shephatiah, 372. The sons of Er, 652. The sons.
And it goes on. Wow. It should be in a world where 5 men have to build a wall.
No, it's nothing like that.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people there to do this work, but they were certainly having to stand guard, and it was not a conducive working environment. Next, we have Ezra reading the book of the law, chapter 8, verse 8. They read from the book, from the law of God clearly, and they gave the sense so that the people understood the reading. So it wasn't just a blah 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 blah. He would read the law to them and then explain to them what it meant. So we would call that today preaching.
Yeah.
Really, this is a case where you see preaching happening.
What the heck? No, stop it. No, stop. Sorry, my cat is randomly scratching me. No.
Yeah, that's why cats are evil. So then we have the people of Israel confessing their sin. The people who sealed the covenant. It's just a bunch of lists of people in these next chapters. We have the leaders of Jerusalem, and then the villages outside of Jerusalem, and the priests and the Levites. The dedication of the wall, the service of the temple. Uh-oh, crashed again.
Oh,
Got a relatively long time out of it, that one at that time. And then in chapter 13, we have Nehemiah's final reforms, all the things that he's doing to kind of set everything straight in Israel and get them back on the right path. He would go through and set up judges in the land, and he reminded them of their need to judge rightly. So very important there. Next, we have Esther.
oh boy. Can we really go over this one? Because, I'm going to read this on my own time because I look forward to this one.
Well,
This is one of my favorite books.
You should read it on your own time. And we'll go over it now as well.
All right.
But for the purpose of the video or the audio covering Esther, a great story of a woman who is in a scenario that is not ideal for her, probably as a matter of faith, being in a king's harem, as you will, because that's where she was before she was queen. She was just a harem member. But in chapter 1, verse 19, it reads, "If it please the king, let a royal order go out from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and of the Medes, so that it may not be repealed, that Vashti is never again to come before King Ahasuerus. And let the king give her royal position to another who is better than she." So when the decree was made by the king, and by the king is proclaimed throughout all his kingdom, for it is vast. All women will give honor to their husbands, high and low alike. This advice pleased the king and the princes, and the king did as Memucan proposed. He sent letters to all the royal provinces, to every province in its own script, and to every people in its own language, that every man be master in his own household and speak according to the language of his people. So here we have, by the king's decree, the man is the head of the house, and he's sending that out to all of his kingdom and making that the case because Queen Vashti had disrespected him by not going to see him like he had asked. Next, we have Esther being chosen as queen. She was regarded as incredibly beautiful, so much so that Ahasuerus would basically flirt with her, going out of his way to go see her, all that kind of stuff. Mordecai uncovers a plot.
I'm not going to say anything about that.
About what?
The flirting and stuff.
Well, that's what he did. When you look at when you read it and you think about, well, what is behavior like that like today? And it is young people who go out of their way to make sure that they see the person that they want to see. Nothing wrong with it. It's just normal human behavior. Mm-hmm. And Ahasuerus was definitely human. So anyhow, Mordecai discovers a plot, chapter 2, verse 19. Now when the virgins were gathered together the second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's table. Esther had not made known her kindred or her people, as Mordecai had commanded her. For Esther obeyed Mordecai just as when she was brought up by him. In those days, as Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, who guarded the threshold, became angry and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. And this came to the knowledge of Mordecai, and he told it to Queen Esther, and Esther told the king in the name of Mordecai. When the affair was investigated and found to be so, the men were both hanged on the gallows, and it was recorded in the book of the Chronicles in the presence of the king. So we see here a plot that ends up gaining favor. Haman will plot against the Jews, and Esther ends up saving the Jews, putting herself in great peril doing so. She prepares a banquet feast for the king and invites the king to the banquet and basically uncovers the plot at the banquet. And instead of Mordecai being hanged, Haman ends up getting hanged, and Mordecai ends up being honored as the second most powerful man in the kingdom, only to Ahasuerus. So Esther ends up saving the Jews, and the Jews end up throughout all the land destroying their enemies. And then the Feast of Purim is inaugurated. And chapter 10, while it is very short, talks about the greatness of Mordecai. King Ahasuerus imposed tax on the land, on the the coastlands of the sea, and all the acts of his power and might, and the full account of high honor of Mordecai, to which the king advanced him, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was second in rank to King Ahasuerus, and he was great among the Jews and popular with the multitudes of his brothers, for he sought the welfare of his people and spoke peace to all his people. So you have a very a man who went from basically first to worst in terms of the kingdom there because of how things worked out. So next we have the book of Job. We're already past the 1 hour mark, and I'm gonna kind of gloss over Job fairly quickly. Job, the story of the man likely who lived before the flood, is the common thinking on that book. Who would be the richest man on earth, have everything taken away except for his wife, and then be returned to being the richest man on earth. It's good to read it before you start suffering, because it has a lot in it on why do the just receive punishment and the unjust tend to prosper. So
Yeah.
Chapter 1, verse 5, and when the days of the feast had run their course, Job would send and consecrate them, and he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offering according to the number of them all. For Job said, it may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus Job did continually. It just kind of shows you what kind of a man Job is. In chapter 2, verse 9, then his wife said to him, this is after he's already been afflicted, do you still hold fast your integrity? Curse God and die. But he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women who would speak. Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. So and then we have Job's Lamentations. In chapter 3, Eliphaz speaks about how the innocent prosper. And it's interesting when you read what Eliphaz and the other two friends have to say, you see truth mixed in to their statements. So they're not just completely off the wall. Chapter 4, verse 8 is a good example. As I have seen, those who plow iniquity and sow trouble reap the same. By the breath of God they perish, and by the blast of his anger they are consumed. So that's a true statement. It does happen that way. We can read specific Bible accounts of those things happening, but it's not always true. So it's not a universal law that we see there. And in verse 17, can mortal man be in the right before God? Can a man be pure before his maker? He knows those are rhetorical questions, and the answer is no to both of them. Chapter 5, more of the same. As for me, I would seek God, and to God would I commit my cause. Verse 9, who does great things and unsearchable marvelous things without number. He gives rain on the earth and sends waters on the fields. He sets on high those who are lowly, and those who mourn are lifted to safety. He frustrates the devices of the crafty so that their hands achieve no success. We can read biblical accounts of all those things happening. So once again, are they true? Yes. Are they universally true? No is the answer there. Job's response in chapter 6, verse 8, oh, that I might have my request, and that God would fulfill my hope, that it would please God to crush me, that he would let me lose his hand and cut me off. This would be my comfort. I would even exult in pain, unsparing, for I have not denied the words of the Holy One. What is my strength that I should wait, and what is my end that I should be patient? Is my strength the strength of the stones, or is my flesh bronze? Have I any help in me when resource is driven from me? That is the talking of a man that is at his end. And Job certainly would have been, given all that he'd been through. In chapter 7, verse 4, when I lie down, this is Job still, when I lie down, I say, when shall I arise? But the night is long, and I am full of tossing till the dawn. My flesh is clothed with worms and dirt. My skin hardens, then breaks out afresh. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle, and come to their end without hope. He's, as far as he knows, he's at the end of his life. It's all going to end here any time for him. And when you look at the way he's describing his physical condition, he's clothed with worms and dirt, and his skin hardens and then breaks out afresh. I mean, that's describing leprosy, most likely. It's not a pleasant condition. It's incredibly painful, and he would be a candidate today for physician-assisted suicide. The way he's going on there. Bildad responds in chapter 8, in verse 5, if you will seek God and plead with the Almighty for mercy, if you are pure and upright, surely then he will rouse himself for you and restore your rightful habitation. And though your beginning was small, your latter days will be very great. So he's basically asking Job to appeal to God to fix everything. In verse 20, behold, God will not reject a blameless man, nor take the hand of evildoers. He will yet fill your mouth with laughter and your lips with shouting. Those who hate you will be clothed with shame, and the tent of the wicked will be no more. Job has a pretty quick reply in verse 2 of chapter 9. Truly I know that it is so, but how can a man be in the right before God? If one wished to contend with him, one could not answer him once in 1,000 times. He is wise in heart and mighty in strength, who has hardened himself against him and succeeded. It's interesting in chapter 9 that you read that, as if you read on in the book of Job, you'll see that Job does in fact end up challenging God and say, why are all these things happening to me? I'm a good guy. I'm not supposed to be suffering like this.
You think about that a lot. I mean, you always see good people struggling with stuff.
Yeah. I mean, at my work, I see it all the time. I work next to a cancer clinic, so see people getting infusions and getting treated for their diseases, and some of them I know personally, and it's disheartening to watch. But at the same time,
It's a fallen world.
Yeah, we know that it's no reflection of their spiritual character. In chapter 14, verse 1, Job says, man who is born of a woman is few of days and full of trouble. He comes out like a flower and withers. He flees like a shadow and continues not. And do you open your eyes on such a one and bring me into judgment with you? Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean? There is not one, since his days are determined, and the number of his months is with you, and you have appointed his limits that he cannot pass. Look away from him and leave him alone, that he may enjoy like a hired hand his day. So you just really kind of see the terminus of all things that Job is seeing there. It's gives you insights into who he was, what he's going through. Chapter 17, verse 13. If I hope for Sheol as my house, if I make my bed in darkness, if I say to the pit, you are my father, and to the worm, my mother or my sister, where then is my hope? Who will see my hope? Will it go down to the bars of Sheol? Shall we descend together into the dust? The interesting thing to me here is that he still has hope. This is not a hopeful situation. It's not one where you'd say, boy, I hope I get better. He is eaten up with his diseases.
Yeah. Where does he get that hope from? Is it just like his pure self-will?
Well, I mean, we know what a servant of God he was. He was considered for his time, the number one man. Number one man on planet Earth in terms of godliness. That's what Satan basically referred to him as.
Yeah.
There's none holier than Job. So, faith is where I would say. In Job 21, verse 7, Why do the wicked live, reach old age, and grow mighty in power? That's a question that we often ask ourselves, whenever we look at, politics or wealth and the economy and those kinds of things. So this is a question that's been around a long time and is even today still around. So in chapter 23, verse 2, oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even to his seat, looking for God to challenge him. Whereas earlier he just affirmed how that's not even really possible. In chapter 27, and Job again took up his discourse and said, as God lives, who has taken away my right, and the Almighty, who has made my soul bitter, as long as my breath is in me, and the Spirit of God is in my nostrils, my lips will not speak falsehood, and my tongue will not utter deceit. Far be it from me to say that you are right. Till I die, I will not put away my integrity from me. I hold fast my righteousness and will not let it go. My heart does not reproach me for any of my days. He felt really no guilt over what he had done. He knew he had lived righteously. I think his only real downfall was questioning God. But even, that's not to say that I'm any better, that I don't do that from time to time, because there's certain times where your faith is tested, and those are the things that the questions that you have to answer for yourself.
Yeah.
Let's see. Elihu ends up joining the conversation, and then it's Job and his 4 friends, and he basically tells all of them, "You're nuts." And he really kind of starts off as he starts off on the right track, in terms of his philosophy, so to speak. But even he turns to the point where he's rebuking Job. But if we have to pick one of the friends, Elihu is the one that by far gets it above all the others. And the interesting thing about that is that he is the youngest. His reason for being quiet up until this point is that he is young of years. So in chapter 38, we see God's answer to Job, same for 39. And then chapter 40, verse 3, then Job answered the Lord and said, behold, I am a small account. What shall I answer you? I lay my hand on my mouth. I have spoken once, and I will not answer twice, but I will proceed no further. At this point, Job gets what he had already asserted, and that's that there's no way someone like me, being Job, can question God. Who am I to do that? And then chapter 42, we have Job's confession and repentance, and we see the return of Job's fortunes all returned to him. So now the Psalms. Let's see. Let me look at the schedule here, because I know we have Psalms chapter 8.
Stop here for right now and then just start fresh next week on Psalms.
No, we need to finish up through Psalms 8 at least. But for next week, if you want to invite anybody to join us, we'll be looking at Psalms 9 all the way through basically the end of Proverbs. So
yeah, I invited a bunch of people. I even messaged some YouTubers and stuff.
Yeah, we all invite people, and those who want to show up will, and those who don't. It's it's up to them. They can always watch later too, which is
the one guy was going on vacation, and the other guy didn't seem like he was that interested.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. Hopefully one day he is, and then these videos will be there for him to watch as he reviews if he so desires. So in Psalms chapter 1, one of the first Psalms I ever memorized any part of, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. I am not a daily Bible reader by want or desire, and it's interesting that here in chapter 1, verse 2 of Psalms, this idea of meditating on the law of God day and night. Now that I do. So while I might not read my Bible every day, and not to downplay it, obviously I think it's important since we're doing this exercise of reading through the Bible in 90 days. I can't say that I read my Bible daily before this.
Well, well, okay. I'm just gonna add something. Is that me? Best thing my dad has done is he studied the Bible every single day with us, just a little bit, a few verses here and there. We just have this little family tradition of prayer and Bible. We say a little quiet prayer for 5 minutes or so, and then we'll talk about the Bible, and it can be a quick 5 minute discussion or a half hour long discussion. But
Yep.
we've just made it a point to try to every single day read the Bible. And well, I don't read the Bible every day on my own initiative, although I have been lately. I've there's only been up until recently, we really hadn't missed a day of prayer and Bible. We'd always read something of the Bible. My dad would just go over and he'd just talk about it. He'd lead the family as a father, a spiritual leader, and that's always been the best thing for me.
And that's tremendous. Commendable and should be done if at all possible.
And he's
So
been doing it since I was even unable to understand the word, since I couldn't even, I couldn't even talk. He's just,
before you can remember.
yeah.
Well, I've known your dad a long time. I think very highly of him, and that's a great practice that should be implemented. We have prayer time, and we talk about the Bible's teachings regularly, but we don't do a constant reading like we should in my household. But that's something that's interesting when you read here that this meditation on the law of the Lord is so important, especially for people of the time when this was written, where the access to the law is not like we have a Bible on every tablet or phone or I probably have 20 printed Bibles in this house. But am I spending time not in the book but with the book in me, working through my brain and guiding my path? Verse 3 of chapter 1, he is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers. The wicked are not so, but are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the right congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish.
One thing about also the meditation, I'm sorry, I'm just heading back a little bit, is it's when you do meditate, you're praying and you're just kind of thinking about the things you've learned in the week. You're trying to see where God's taking you. But I find I get too wrapped up in my head, and it's almost narcissistic, and I get caught up on myself, and it's like I've always been an overthinker, and I find myself meditating at first, and then it just winds up being kind of brooding late into the night. And
Yeah.
I think we have to, when the Bible talks about meditating, I think, on His Word and on Him, I think we it, we don't realize how that's a challenge. It is.
Oh, yeah. It takes
Me at
work.
least.
It takes effort. My grandfather, who was not a Christian, told me that if you can ever get work, you want to work with your brain. It's harder, more challenging. You'll be tired when you're done, but your body will last longer, and it's better for you. So
Yeah.
I don't know that I agree with him 100%, but working with your brain, you need to make sure you stay focused. That's kind of the hardest part.
Yeah.
It's interesting in chapter 2, verse 1, why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord holds them in derision. Then he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, as for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. When we're about to go into the presidential election cycle yet again in our country, and this is really what goes on, is we focus not on, we focus so much on our government and not, government of the people, and not the governor who should be governing our lives, which is God. If we let God govern our lives, then we're not going to have problems with our federal government. So next we have a Psalm of David in Psalms 3, when he fled from Absalom, in Psalms 4, another, I believe they're called imprecatory Psalms. I'm going to look that up real quick.
Okay.
Tory Psalms. Are those that invoke judgment, calamity, or curses upon one's enemies? No, that's not what I was looking for. So neither one of these are that. In chapter 4, it's interesting for, I think, young men especially. Answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have given me relief when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. O men, how long shall my honor be turned into shame? How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? But know that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself. The Lord hears when I call him. Be angry and do not sin. Ponder in your own heart on your beds and be silent. Offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. Most young men, or many young men, I should say, are very, very bad at verses 4 through 5. And even as you get older, it gets easier. But I know when I was younger, that's something that I personally had to struggle with was anger. And even today, it's a battle. But now I know how to fight the battle and win rather than giving in.
When it's anger at yourself?
Well, I mean, you can be as angry at yourself as you can be with anybody else, but you have to still be the same way then as a result of your anger. Let's see. A lot of Psalms of deliverance here at the beginning of the book. Psalm 7 is a great psalm of where we should keep our focus. And then Psalms chapter 8, I'll read it. It's short. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouth of babies and infants you have established strength because of your foes to still the enemy and the avenger. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon of the stars, which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you care for him? Yet you have made him a little lower than the heavenly beings and crowned him with glory and honor. You have given him dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, and also the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens and the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the seas. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Just a great psalm to really remind us of who we are in the whole grand scheme of things. So,
yeah.
Great way to end this week's discussion.
All right.
I pray that we can see you and anybody else that wants to join us next week.
Yeah, hopefully.
Psalms, the rest of the book of Psalms, and all of the book of Proverbs. So,
is this the second, or no? This is the first Thursday. On a third Thursday, I have a mandatory volunteer meeting.
yeah, not a problem.
It's kind of funny, but mandatory volunteer.
Well, if you want to continue to be a volunteer, you'll be there. If you don't, then you're not.
Yeah. No, no, I'm just saying the two words are kind of whatever. Never mind. But I look forward to that. But next week I'm going to try. I guess I already did try this week to get people, but I'll try again.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to invite. The worst thing that happens is they say no, and that's not a big deal. So,
Dwight, do you know how to social network? Do you know how to network with different people and basically spam people in the kindest way possible?
well, there's no such thing as kind spam.
No, there is. There is.
I don't think so.
That's how I got 300 subscribers on my YouTube channel.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Through kind spamming?
Through kind spamming. Now, it's not like you just send them a personal message like, hey, you tell them your life story or something like that. You just you comment on things a lot. You just comment on things a lot, and you get like a little reputation for yourself, and
Right.
then people know who you are a little bit, and then you can start saying, oh yeah, well, I relate to this because I did this before, or yeah, we relate to this in this case, because we're studying the Bible and stuff. You kind of get yourself out there, and
Yeah.
then you can kind of spam people here and there depending. But if you need help networking and getting more people to B90X, I could help you out with that.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to. the group exists to spread the word of God and the study of it. So,
Well,
anybody that you want to get in the group, we would love to have them.
do you wanna have a quick 5-minute hangout, a private one?
Sure. Yeah,
All
we'll
right.
stop and I'll invite you.